Welcome to Episode 10, Tailoring Workflow, From Assumption to Parameter. Tailoring may sound like creative freedom, but in practice, it is a disciplined workflow that keeps customization defensible and repeatable. The goal is not to bend the framework to convenience, but to fit it logically to reality, backed by reasoning that others can follow. Each decision must trace from a specific assumption or constraint to a defined parameter value that makes sense within that context. Think of tailoring as architecture, not improvisation. Each measurement, material, and joint must make sense together. When done systematically, tailoring turns NIST 853 from a catalog into a living, testable design that reflects the organization's true environment rather than someone's preference. Building on that foundation, the first step is to gather assumptions, constraints, and dependencies that shape what tailoring can achieve. Assumptions describe what is considered true about the environment, such as system boundaries or user behavior. Constraints define limitations like budget, staffing, or technology stack. Dependencies capture the conditions that must exist for a control to function, such as the availability of a central logging service. Collecting these factors early prevents later surprises. Imagine a team tailoring access review frequency before realizing that human resources updates only run monthly. That missed dependency will undermine the entire schedule. Good tailoring starts with full situational awareness. Once those baseline facts are gathered, identify overlay triggers and drivers that apply to your system. Overlay triggers are sector, mission, or technology conditions that add or modify control expectations. For example, a healthcare overlay may strengthen privacy requirements, while a cloud overlay may emphasize shared responsibility. Drivers include regulatory commitments, customer contracts, or internal risk appetites that push tailoring in one direction or another. Listing these elements clarifies which external forces must be respected and where flexibility remains. The intent is not to multiply complexity, but to avoid reinventing what has already been resolved by community guidance. From there, map high-level requirements to the realities of implementation. This mapping step translates what the control expects into what the system can deliver. For instance, a control might require timely review of access, but the system may use automated certification tools that work on a different cadence. Mapping clarifies where alignment is tight and where adaptation is needed. It also exposes dependencies between teams. Security cannot finalize a frequency until human resources or operations confirm their data cycles. Documenting these linkages ensures tailoring reflects both compliance and feasibility. The more explicit the map, the smoother later approval will be. Next, draft parameter candidates and record their rationale before making final choices. Each candidate represents a potential value for fields like frequency, duration, or threshold. Write short notes explaining why each value could work. One might reduce workload, another might match regulatory expectations, and a third might best fit risk exposure. This stage encourages thoughtful comparison rather than instinctive picking. For example, proposing weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly scanning intervals forces discussion about what coverage the organization truly needs. A list of candidates is not waste. It is evidence of diligence and a safeguard against bias. At this point, consultation becomes critical. Engage stakeholders and risk owners to test assumptions and confirm practicality. Stakeholders bring operational realities. System engineers can confirm automation limits, while privacy officers ensure legal obligations remain intact. Risk owners weigh potential consequences of each parameter choice. Together, they help balance ambition with capacity. This collaboration prevents tailoring from becoming a purely technical exercise divorced from mission priorities. The best outcomes arise when everyone who will live with the decision also shapes it. Tailoring, done well, becomes a shared language between policy, engineering, and leadership. After consultation, it is time to decide the final values, scope, and timing. Decisions should resolve which parameters apply to which systems, how often they are reviewed, and when updates will occur. These values become part of the organization's risk posture, so treat them with care. Document whether each parameter is global, local, or conditional. For instance, daily backup verification might apply to production systems, but weekly to development. Timing matters because real-world constraints, like change windows or maintenance periods, affect feasibility. The moment these values are agreed upon, they graduate from ideas to operational commitments. Recording those decisions with full version history ensures transparency and accountability. Each entry should capture who approved the value, when it was established, and why. Versioning protects against both confusion and revisionism later. Imagine an auditor asking why scan intervals shifted from weekly to monthly. Without version control, the team scrambles for memory instead of pointing to a record showing leadership approved the change after risk reevaluation. A living log of tailoring decisions demonstrates maturity and integrity. History is not clutter, it is evidence of thought. Once parameters are finalized, integrate them into policies and operational design patterns so they become part of daily practice. Policies formalize the expectations, while patterns define how to implement them consistently. For example, if the approved patch window is 14 days, that value should appear in the patch management policy, the automation scripts, and the monitoring dashboard. Integration keeps everyone working from the same playbook. Without it, parameters remain trapped in documentation and never influence behavior. A decision only becomes real when it shows up in the workflow and in the evidence that proves it. Tailoring also includes planning how verification, evidence, and sampling will confirm success. Each parameter should have a corresponding method of proof. If password rotations are defined every 60 days, identify what system logs, exports, or reports will verify that frequency. Plan sampling logic to test enough instances to be credible without excessive effort. Evidence should arise naturally from system operation, not manual screenshots or ad hoc reports. Designing verification early prevents surprises during audits and keeps tailoring aligned with continuous monitoring and assessment cycles. Proof is the twin of policy. Even disciplined tailoring must handle exceptions, waivers, and compensating controls. Exceptions are temporary deviations awaiting remediation. Waivers are approved long-term deviations accepted by leadership, and compensating controls are alternative measures providing equivalent protection. Each must be documented with rationale, duration, and review dates. For instance, if a legacy application cannot support encryption, a compensating control might be network isolation. Ignoring such gaps breaks credibility. Acknowledging them shows control of reality. Structured exception handling turns imperfection into transparency rather than failure. Tailoring is not a one-time event. Reevaluate parameters after significant changes or incidents. System migrations, mergers, or new regulations can all invalidate earlier assumptions. Post-incident reviews often reveal that parameters were too loose or outdated. Scheduling periodic reevaluation ensures the framework evolves with the environment. This habit converts tailoring from a project into a lifecycle discipline. Over time, repeated refinement improves both precision and resilience, proving that adaptability and consistency can coexist when governance stays strong. Governance gives that consistency shape through regular reviews, approvals, and publication windows. Each cycle should include a forum where proposed changes are discussed, approved, and then published to the teams affected. Governance should also define escalation paths for disputed parameters and timelines for formal adoption. Publication windows, such as quarterly updates, prevent confusion by letting everyone know when official values refresh. Predictable rhythm builds trust and avoids the churn of constant tweaks. Governance, done right, keeps tailoring synchronized with organizational change rather than lagging behind it. In the end, auditable and defensible tailoring decisions rest on discipline, documentation, and dialogue. The workflow moves from assumption to parameter through a chain of reasoning that anyone can follow, audit, or rebuild. Each step, from gathering constraints to integrating patterns, forms part of that traceable story. When tailoring is transparent, it no longer feels like bending rules. It becomes the craft of applying them wisely. The result is a framework that fits the organization perfectly because it was built with evidence, consensus, and purpose at every step. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.